Hey, it's Amanda. I wanted to talk about dandelions this week because they're popping up all over the place. And in the past, I know I've been like, okay, kids, you can pick out a few dandelions, but don't take them all because they're the first food for the bees. So this year, since I'm kind of concentrating on different things each week and figuring out what the best way to go about stuff is, I wanted to figure out, are they the best food for bees and the first food, and are they super important to leave? And should you feel bad for harvesting them, or is it pretty okay to take care of them and get them out of your yard? So I'm going to tell you what I learned about dandelions this week. At first I thought my post for this week would be super short, like, dandelions, don't touch them because the bees need them. And then I started diving into it and finding out that while dandelions are important, they're maybe not as important as I thought they were. First, before we really dig into the dandelion stuff, I just want to acknowledge, the way we do lawns has been changing. We don't expect people to all have this pristine sheet of Kentucky bluegrass for your lawns that it's mowed two times a week and nothing lives in there because it's so full of chemicals and nasty stuff that any bee that stops there is going to keel over by the time they fly away. I think we're starting to realize the impact that our lawn care is having on our ecosystems, and that it is important to create habitat space instead of just making this wasteland of green, short, manicured lawns. So even though we do have a lawn, we've tried our best to fill it with flowers and grass and shrubs to make it more of a habitat than just like a lawn. But I don't think I'm a bad neighbor for not mowing it twice a week, and if the grass is longer than this, it has to be mowed. And I'm guessing my neighbor kitty corner from us might disagree from the glances that I've gotten from him. And we call him Sir Mows a lot because he mows his lawn a lot. But there are some solutions to having just the bluegrass lawn. You can do it with clover or thyme or fescue grass or Irish moss now. So those things are coming around as acceptable lawns to have in your home. One of the problems is your city might actually tell you oh, you have to mow your grass every so often. It can't be so long. And I think that's a little ridiculous because they're not encouraging those natural ecosystems to pop up. We have a few lawns in our yard where they are taken care of and maintained, but they aren't mowed all the time, and they look great. And those people use art in their yard, or the daisies all come up and it's beautiful. It's my favorite thing to drive by. And so it's not a bad thing if you don't mow your yard. Keep it up, but you don't have to have it perfect. All right, back to dandelions. So dandelions, from what I found out, play a really important ecological role for our soil. So if your soil is really compacted, that taproot that the dandelion sends down is going to help kind of aerate the soil and break it up a little bit. They also can help with a lawn that needs a little more calcium. So that taproot goes down, kind of sucks up the calcium from the soil, and then when the dandelion gets mowed down or it dies, and the leaf and the stems and the flower, so that calcium gets brought up to the surface. One other thing that I found out about, but I still can't find good reasons as to how and why it happens, is that dandelions help neutralize the pH in an acidic soil. So still wondering on that one and why that would happen. So I'm still trying to figure that one out. So those dandelions having that important ecological role for your soil, as far as what I've heard and what I've been reading, if you have a lot of dandelions, it's more of a big indicator that your area needs dandelions to help the soil do those things. And that eventually, from what I've heard, they should kind of weed themselves out and thin themselves out so that there's less dandelions in the long run. So dandelions are good for your soil, and they also are one of the first foods for our insect friends, our bees and our other pollinator friends. But it's not the only plant that comes up that they're getting pollen from in the early springtime. And dandelions are kind of like the junk food for those animals. It's going to give them something, but it's not giving them all the proper amino acids that they need. So they've found that dandelion pollen is lacking in a few different amino acids that are necessary to raise a healthy brood of bees. It's just like if we were to only eat chips. Yeah, you could live off of chips for a little while, but you're gonna see some effects in your health and a decline in your health after a while of just eating chips. So we want those bees to have all the necessary amino acids and nutrients, but if it's the only food, then they should be eating whatever food is available. So if there's other flowers, trees, and shrubs that the bees will go and get pollen from in the springtime, those are probably better for them than just the dandelions. But the dandelions aren't bad for them, it's just you don't want them just eating dandelions. The other thing to consider is, how do you feel about dandelions? Do you hate them? Are they making you crazy by being in your yard? Or do you love them because they're a nice welcome sign of spring, some little yellow pops of color around? So how do you feel about dandelions? Because that's part of this too, is being practical. And where do you live? Does your city allow you to have grass that's long enough that you're going to have lots of dandelions? So how did I decide what we're going to do with dandelions in our yard? We decided a long time ago that we weren't going to be using a lot of chemicals in our lawn. Like, that's just a no-go for us unless it's really needed in certain areas, and then being used as sparsely as possible. So Roundup is not that welcome in our household, but we have had to use it for certain things. We're letting our dandelions grow in the grass for longer in the spring, let them serve their purpose, and then when it is time where it's like, okay, we really need to cut our grass, then we'll cut our grass. But we want to push that first grass cutting out a little bit longer than normal. So when I set out to film this, there were hardly any dandelions out, and then I went on vacation for a week, and now most of them have already got a seed. So they're not here for very long. But in the areas where I do have like my vegetable gardens or my rock work that I really have painstakingly worked on to try and make it look nice with the flowers in there, for pollinators too, those dandelions I do try and get out. I either pull them out or I do flame them, which it's probably not the most eco-friendly option out there, but for me it's really convenient because we only spend a few minutes a month doing it, and that gets rid of them for a month, and then they come back, and they will grow back if you just flame them, but it only takes a little bit of time instead of pulling those all out. So maybe eventually I'll dig them all out, but it's really hard to do that in the rock work. And I'm not gonna feel bad if my kids pull them out. I'm not gonna be like, you can't do that, those are bees' food. I'll let them do it. It makes them appreciate nature more. And let's be honest with ourselves, adults, even now if you see like a really good dandelion puff of seeds, you're gonna pick that up and blow on it just for fun. Maybe you're not making a wish, but it's still fun to blow dandelion seeds. For those ones that you do want to get rid of, dig them out as deep as you can, even if you get like a little bit of soil around there. And you got to get that taproot out, otherwise it's just going to keep growing and growing in the same spot. So you can't just pluck them off of the surface. You have to dig the whole thing out, and only digging if it's a safe area for you to dig in, if you know there's not any wires or cables going through underneath there. So always check and make sure it's a safe area first. You can use a spade or a shovel, or they do make like dandelion remover tools, either like little hand ones or big longer ones that you can stand up so you don't have to bend over and do it. So there are different tools specifically made for pulling those out. I haven't used any of them, but it seems like those are pretty popular tools to use. And then when you're done digging the dandelion out, pour a little bit of white vinegar down the hole and make sure it's not getting on the surrounding plants or grass. And then you can use your compost that you've been making to cover up that hole and kind of seal it up. That's what I've learned about dandelions this week and how to deal with them the natural way. I want to know in the comments how you view dandelions. Do you love them, or are they like your ultimate worst enemy?
I love dandelions. Mom, here.
Oh, thank you. If you haven't already, subscribe and hit the bell below if you want to get more eco-friendly living tips, and join us for our 52-week challenge on how to live a more sustainable life. Thanks for watching.